Before the WoW token, buying gold with real money was done through some shady sites that would do all kinds of workarounds to get the gold to you without getting caught. As someone whose friend bought gold once, the process went like this. Pay them the money, get a phone call to verify, post an agreed upon item on the auction house, like a single water from an inn vendor for the amount you want plus 5%. Then someone would buy your auction and you'd have your gold in an hour. Pretty easy stuff for my friend. So, how do these gold farmers get the gold to sell you? Well, through many ways over the years. Back in the early days of vanilla, fishing everywhere. Before getting to max level, fishing was the single best gold per hour activity in the game, as you would routinely fish up gray items at vendor for a decent amount, green items you auction off for a nice profit, and the fish themselves even vendored for a respectable amount. If you can get a lower level character into a high level zone without constantly getting killed by mobs, you could make quite a bit of gold before doing anything else. Booty Bay was a pretty popular place to fish, as it's a neutral coastal city, so you wouldn't have to worry about mob aggro. You could watch farmers go at it fishing all day, every day, as well as a lot of real players, as fishing was just too good to pass up. Blizzard responded to this rampant fishing epidemic by nerfing fishing into the ground. They disabled fishing completely in all high-level zones, made catching non-fish very rare, and then removed altogether until later expansions brought it back. Fish, which used to vendor for nice amounts, now only sold for coppers at most, and added a player level requirement to fishing, so you couldn't catch high-level fish until you yourself were a high-level player. For a time, alchemists couldn't max out their profession because a lot of their later recipes required high-level fish, and fishing in high-level zones was not allowed. After the nerf to fishing, farmers had to find more creative ways to get their mountains of gold to sell in the gold black market. Ever hear of the ever so popular huntard or hunter loot? With the nerf to fishing, farmers would instead grind mobs in high-level zones for hours on end, and BM hunters are one of the more popular classes to do that grinding on. Since most of the gold farmers in the game were hunters, and all were 100% spec'd into hours of mob grinding, they weren't the best players in the world if they ever stumbled into other content by mistake, and would just need on all loot no matter what. Since hunters had one of the most versatile weapons usage and armor, they could need on just about everything but maces and plate armor. One of the more popular mob grinding zones was the cliffs right next to Azara. It was the perfect location for farmers. It was a high-level zone, the mobs dropped the highest average amount of silver in the open world. Azara was basically a wasteland for normal players, as the quests in the zone were very few and far in between, seeing as Blizzard had plans of turning the zone into a huge battleground at some point in the future, but never did. And you could farm Failcloth from the satyrs. Failcloth could be turned into Mooncloth, which was used in nearly all epic tailor recipes in vanilla, and always sold. But this is largely where the farming in-game gold exploiting ends, as far as the farmers go. Towards the end of vanilla and through all of BC and Wrath, the farmers realized it was far more efficient to just hack accounts and steal all the gold accumulated from real players. That's not to say people stopped farming altogether, and farming bots are still very much a thing that happens even to this day. I remember reading a Reddit AMA once about a guy who owned a bot farming server. He had anything from 50 to 100 accounts at a time, each one with a different botting pattern installed on the characters who would farm ore or herbs on different servers all day, every day, but in a way to make it seem like they were legitimate players. Some of the bots went back to town for hour-long breaks, some even took small frequent breaks and logged off periodically. Each one had an alert system that would send him a text message if any of his bots got a whisper from a GM or player, in which case he'd just bring up that particular account and respond like a normal human. Pretty interesting stuff. But anyways, back to the hackers. The hackers would vendor everything they could and send off valuable items to their other accounts as quickly as possible once they took your account. Then they would actually take the time to level enchanting on your tune to disenchant all your gear and send off the shards. Hacking got so bad and so frequent that it would sometimes take Blizzards weeks to get your account back to you. And with the restoration of your items and gold came an inflated economy, since the gold they stole was still out there and you were just handed your gold back, essentially duplicating the amount of gold in the game, causing inflation and why everyone had more gold as new expansions came out. All of this hacking caused Blizzard to introduce the Authenticators in Wrath of the Lich King, of which they'd sell out every time they got a new batch, causing them to develop a phone app shortly after. The thing is though, not everyone uses an Authenticator, so hacking is still a pretty big issue. In Cataclysm, Blizzard introduced the Guardian Cub Pet to their pet store, the first item you could buy from Blizzard with real money and then sell in-game to other players for gold. At the time it was considered a success, but the amount of people willing to spend a large chunk of gold on a pet was small, and grew even smaller when account-wide pets were introduced the following expansion. Blizzard discontinued the Cub in 2014 and introduced the WoW token in 2015, something pretty much every player would want to buy and not just a small niche. The WoW token gives you 30 days of game time, costs $20, and can sell for anywhere from 20 to 30k on US servers. This is essentially putting a real-world currency on in-game gold, making 25k gold be worth around 20 bucks. So if you wanted to buy a Grand Expedition yak, you'd have to fork over $120, which is a hefty amount of money. But seeing as the WoW token is only a one-way system, cash for gold, the farmers and hackers still have motivation to keep doing what they're doing. Until the loop is completed, as in being able to convert gold into actual cash, the hackers and farmers will continue. Actually, scratch that. Even if the loop was completed, they'd still be hacking.